true to what you said on paper.
I wish that I...
Yeah. Good morning. Welcome back to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. I'm your host, Larry Ellison, in studio with my brother from another. Dr. Bradley is inside. He is hurrying in here to take his seat, his rightfully earned seat here at the table there. Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I'm blessed and highly favored by the Lord, brother. How are you?
So, Dr. Bradley, just quickly, I was showing because I get these alerts all the time right now. This is right up the street on Dorchester Street. 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,000 square feet. See the price?
1.3? Is that just 1.3?
That's not a typo. Yeah. Hey, yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. $1.3 million for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And the monthly HOA fee would be another $440.
Monthly.
Monthly. That's a monthly fee on top of your mortgage. For a home, 1.3,
and that will go up eventually.
1.3 million. Yes, it will go up.
Yeah,
it will go up. You know, so that's what I'm saying is that when you do the average price, to put that in perspective, my first home I bought in Hyde Park for my mom, one of the few, is 1,500 square feet, and I paid $135,000 for that back then, brand new. And granted, I know things are gone up considerably, and that is worth considerably more than what I paid for it. But it's just mind-boggling, these prices. Like I said, there's some here that are 600 square feet that are closer to, but in Boston, that are 1.3, 1.4.
So how do you raise a family in Boston, a man of color, with a wife and two children?
Well, I have people who have, and that's why we're going to have our sponsor, Cora Holbrook, the branch manager for the Money Store. He said if you want to give her a call at area code 508-345-4726. She's going to be in studio next week with Samuel Reimer of K&R Realty talking about this. And you're right. I mean, I have kids who are paying close to $6,000 or not more a month for their mortgage, and these are police officers, and they're saying, "Hey, I can't afford that. It's ridiculous. I can't afford that kind of money." But that's the going rate, and that's what's pushing out. That's what the gentrification. It is real, brother. It is real. Wow. That is exactly that is taking place here. So
you come out better when you retire, man. Moving out of here.
Well, that's the thing is it's pushing the prices up in the South, but it's still where. It's half of what you're paying for here. You can get, a 5,000 square foot home for still $500,000 or $600,000. Now down there for people who aren't making much, that's quite a bit. Yeah. But if you've cashed in here from a home you've owned, that's what they're talking about, that generational wealth that we discuss so often here. Is that's how it's accumulated. 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685 is the number. So, Dr. Brown, I want to play this for you. This is an interview with Abby Phillips. This is a sponsor. He came on Congressman Rep. Byron Donalds from Florida, another sycophant Trump supporter who is lobbying to be the vice president as well, young man. And look, let me be perfectly clear for folk listening. You marry who you marry, I don't care about that. But there is definitely an equation with a lot of people of color when they marry interracial, somehow they feel like they have to choose. Whether or not they want to defend anything that has to do, and we've seen that, with a lot of these folks, what's the South Carolina that's running for VP with Trump as well, Tim Scott, right? He just got engaged to a Caucasian woman, and like I said, this is not, but it's almost like you got to identify with the other side and not who you are. You love who you love. That's not the issue with me. But you can't not notice Clarence Thomas, and we've seen it even within our working confines, right? That there's somehow like a loyalty test to defy who you are, right? So this is part of the interview, and I want to get your take it on the other side.
I'm Abby Phillip in New York, and I want to get right to it tonight. One of Donald Trump's vice presidential contenders, Congressman Byron Donalds, he made some comments that has a lot of you talking and a lot of Democrats fired up. I'm going to speak with him live in just a couple of minutes, but here are the original remarks. They were made as a part of a pitch to black voters in Philadelphia, and I want you to hear it in its full context. Listen.
I grew up with my mom. My dad and my mom, things didn't work out.
as an adult, I look at my father and I say, bro, I don't know what happened, but you my father and I love you.
Wow.
I don't know what happened. I wasn't there.
Wow.
But I'm going to tell you this. Growing up, the one thing I knew I wanted to do, and this is not about my father, this is about what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a father to myself.
Wow.
And so one of the things that's actually happening in our culture, which you're now starting to see in our politics, is the reinvigoration of black families with younger black men and black women. And that is also helping to breed the revival of a black middle class in America. You see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together.
That's right.
During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say it because it's my contemporaries, it's Wesley's contemporaries, you're starting to see more black people be married in homes, raising kids. It's when you home with your wife raising your kids, and then you look at the world, you're saying, now wait a minute, time out. This does not look right. How can I get something to my kids? It goes back to the conversation of generational wealth. Not just having a job, generational wealth.
Now, we should note that many Democrats who jumped on Donald's today claimed that he said that blacks were, quote, better off. As you heard there, he didn't use those exact words in the clip, but the congressman joins me now to talk about that. Congressman, thank you for being here. I want to just focus on really the substance of what you were saying or trying to say in that clip. What did you mean by black families were more together during Jim Crow?
Frankly, what that is about the empirical fact that before the Great Society, before Lyndon Johnson's policies, there was more black families united. The marriage rate in black America was significantly higher before the Great Society. The period of time that coincides with that, obviously, is Jim Crow era. And then after the Great Society, the marriage rate in the black community plummeted significantly. The Great Society is a part of that reason, not completely, but it's definitely a part of that. And what you're seeing right now in America is a reformation of black families in America. That's a good thing, not only for the black community and for black families, but it's also a good thing for the country.
So what was the point of tying together the black family and Jim Crow specifically? I mean, Jim Crow, as you know, was a period of racial segregation, of racial terror. Why would you make that connection?
All I was doing was referring to the time periods when you talk about the historical timelines in America and coinciding with black families and what the marriage rate in black families are. The overarching point is obviously talking about what polling shows today, that about 25% of the black vote, depending on what poll you're looking at, is leaning towards supporting Republicans and supporting President Trump. The corollary to that is that when you're in a family unit, husband and wife, living together, working together, thriving together, you're raising your kids, your thought process is now talking about building generational wealth. What am I leaving to my children? What kind of communities do I want my children to come up in? What are the educational opportunities? What's going on with the economy?
So, he goes on to try to clean up what he's saying. That's Representative Byron Donaldson from the great state of Florida, right? I'm being sarcastic. So, Dr. Bradley, he realizes he stepped in it, right? Because somehow folks try to equate that things like this, slavery, like Ron DeSantis tried to say that slavery was good for black people. It was an economic boom for us, right? Again, from Florida, right? Here's someone who, in a room full of black people, he said referred to his dad as bro, right? Now, would he use that same type of language if he was in a room full of white people so it's almost like it's insulting, it's patronizing.
But brother,
that's why I want to get you ginned up. Go ahead, Mother.
I'm going to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I'm done.
You have the floor.
I'm done. This kid still got milk around his mouth, man. I lived in Jim Crow. You still got people walking today who was children doing Jim Crow. I was born in Augusta, Georgia in 1956. All right, in 1962, I was in downtown Broad Street in Augusta and was beaten because I drank out of the wrong fountain by a police officer. So when I hear that stupidity, you know what I mean? One doesn't get, one is not in a better situation when you can't drink out of a fountain that's providing water for you that you need without, and be beaten for it. So this strikes me, let me calm down, because this strikes me very deeply because I lived through it. All right? I lived through it. My mother, we migrated from Augusta because of the fact that my mother said my 5 sons will kill someone or be killed down here from these people, I got to get them in a better location so they can get a better education. And this guy is sitting there, he has milk around his mouth saying that Jim Crow was better for people of color, black people in particular, doing Jim Crow. I lived it. And you know what? Let me relax.
No. See, and that's better. If you get a chance to go and watch the video that we talked about, right? He's sitting in with an audience of black people. He's got a cigar in his hand. He's smoking. No way would he conduct himself and talk like that in a room. So he thinks he's playing to the folks in the room, which is very disrespectful. But what he's not saying is that what policies he talks in there about, education, housing, all those things. Everything that he and his Republicans have done has been counter to that, right? So student debt, right? How many black families have the ability to pay for it? Like you and your wife have been fortunate. My wife and I are fortunate that we're able to plan our kids' college fund. My mom wasn't able to do it. She worked every single day, single parent home with children. Yeah, my dad was not involved in my life. It didn't stop me from trying to do better. I tried to pay it forward. This is really what he and others that like him are just the opposite, because now you have an opportunity. Clarence Thomas, now there's no need for Clarence Thomas affirmative action. He benefited from it. Now all of a sudden everything is fair and you just have to work hard, right? You've worked hard. You have your doctorate's degree, right? Is it any easier for you to access? Because I know we've had these discussions. When you apply for something, you're still that black man.
You're still a black man. Regardless of how well educated you are, how much money you have,
that's always a strike against you.
You're still carrying black skin, and there's still this foregone conclusion before you even arrive what you are, who you are, and how you want to speak. All right, and so when I hear this idiot, I'm gonna call it what it is. That was a stupid statement he made. I know what he's, and I think that the reporter made it very clear. Why are you trying to connect those two? You know what I mean? Why were you making that connection? He didn't live in it. And so I'm very emotional about this because my family and we lived that in Augusta, Georgia, where our fathers and our grandfathers and our uncles couldn't protect us because they would be lynched. All right. And so when I hear someone like that who didn't live it say something like this, it's just stupidity at its rawest form.
But when he's looking at political gain for himself, this is why I wanted you to hear this, because a lot of people are not paying attention to this, right? He is pandering to Donald Trump. He's on the short list and he won't get it for vice president for Donald Trump. And then you look at all that he's voted against, right? That he's trying to say somehow that black people will get treated in the courts the same way that Donald Trump is somehow a victim because he's held accountable, right? That down in Florida, you can't even read about black kids. In his state, where he's a congressman, you can't even read. And I can almost guarantee you that the population of people where he gets elected don't look like him, right? But now he's the one that's sent out there to represent us. And we got to stop falling for the okie doke because you come sit in a barbershop with a cigar in your hand and talking about your dad as bro, that we're just supposed to go for that.
And the sad part about that, I heard people in the background acquiescence to this idiot who's talking about black people being better off
during Jim Crow.
Doing Jim Crow, but black families were together. I said, I do agree that there was orchestrated social engineering in among our people. We call it the welfare system. I know, I agree with that, but the fact of the matter is, you can't tell me who lived it, who absolutely lived it, that we were in a better situation.
Well, that would be like Carnival Cruise Line saying that slavery ships were pilot for tourism, and that those were somehow. But this is what I'm saying. But this is
that would hit me, man.
Right. This is
hard.
The ignorance, and it should hit you hard, right? To hear someone insulting you that somehow that was good for us, that black families were closer during Jim Crow. Yeah. What were your options? Like you said, you got beat for drinking out of a white fountain, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't go and be in white communities. You couldn't even look at white people. No. So that the reason why you were closer is because you had to stay in your own. Look, I didn't know anything about South Boston during the bus until I went through there and people were throwing rocks at me, right? But I was told early on, do not go to Andrew Square, do not go to Hyde Park, do not go to certain places, right? I stayed in my... So, yes, I was closer to people that looked like me.
Because I was safe.
I wasn't...
It was a safe...
It was for my own safety, as you said, to my own safety. And to hear this type of crap, right? And people falling for it. You know, you're talking about...
Because they didn't live it, Larry. I mean, people... You got people who are who living today by the grace of God, who actually lived through that period. And I agree that I was in the tail end of it, because in '68 we're getting the civil rights movement. We're fighting for more kings on the march. But I lived it. So for him to say, that in my childhood that I was better off when my father could not protect me. Right. My father had to go and grab me and put me in the car, and we had to get out of there real quickly. He could not protect me. He was watching his back.
Did he not talk about Emmett Till, right? But we're going to relive that history. It's sadly that's what it's going to take with some folks to understand that this country is not equal. It's not equal. Look whose rights they're going after: women and minorities, right? Yeah, that's the folks who were the last ones to even get something quality. I mean, like I said, what he's talking about. Joe Biden has gotten rid of over $1 billion in student loans, predominantly black colleges. He has donated more than any president in history to these institutions. That is the equalizer. You guys know, same as we invest in our kids, but not everyone. Not everyone has that ability to do so. Not that they don't want to.
You don't have it,
right? So Donald Trump's kids, grandkids, they don't have to worry, because they were set up from before they were even born. And to try to say that that's because somehow he made it out, the rest of us can do the same thing. It's just crazy. 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. You're listening at the Roundtable with MAMLEO. We're going to take this call while Dr. Bradley takes his blood pressure pills. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the Roundtable.
Hey, good morning, y'all. It's Jamal. How you doing?
Jamal, can you call 911 for Dr. Bradley? He is on fire.
Well, okay, so Dr. Bradley, and it's funny because I actually want to, play around with this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so, oh boy, obviously, it's like every good lie, right, has to be based in some form of truth, because then it's just too outrageous for you to accept. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
So while he is using this for a wicked purpose, there is something in there about the condition of black people before and after or during Jim Crow. But first of all, I wouldn't base it on Jim Crow. It would be based on how we did pre-integration versus segregation, right? Mm-hmm. So Jim Crow, the thought of Jim Crow, that also includes things like, lynchings and things like that. We frown upon that. Right? But some of the effects of segregation, like, for instance, when we had our own schools, right, and things like this, they actually did have an impact. Integration, and this is a lot of, this goes back to the argument between, King and Malcolm X and, the revolutionary argument and whatnot. But has integration actually helped us, or has it actually weakened us and mixed us in with a society that morally, spiritually, does not hold our same values, and therefore our joining together did not raise their bar. It actually lowered ours.
Well,
that makes sense.
But that's a different argument.
It does. But I think
hear what you're saying.
I think your point is, because you're right, Jamal. I was attending, middle school 5 minutes from my house. I went to the Gavin School. It's now our senior building, right? I lived right around the corner from there. I never felt unsafe. I felt like I was getting a good education. And then it started when busing came, and I was shipped over to South Boston to the Gavin School over in South Boston. Every morning I was afraid because of what was going on. I'm a young kid, and I got to go through all this, and I can't understand why, because I didn't have these issues. I never felt afraid walking to school around the corner from my house. And you're right, we had no choice but to band together because we were always in our community. We didn't venture out of them, because of that. I remember, being up in Franklin Park. I remember the Boston Strangler. Somebody said he was up there. Everybody ran out of the park because of the fear of that. That's how I felt every morning when I had to get on that bus, go over to Harbor Point. We couldn't even drive into the police to the school directly. We had to get a police escort from the state police in Boston to get us to the building. I say all this because you're right. They're trying to conflate that because of the situation we were put in, that somehow we were together. We had no choice but be together. We couldn't be in other places, right?
But I'm saying,
no. And so I'll finish with this: is that when you try to make it seem like somehow this was our fault, that somehow a lot of fathers, for whatever reason, if they couldn't get a job. So, not saying in all cases, where the only alternative you had to try to feed your family was some type of public assistance for a lot of these mothers. But if you got public assistance, the father couldn't be in.
That's what I meant by social institutions, social construction. But Jamal is right again. Is that I think I could have bought. And I would have bought it well, because it's truth that we were better off when we were not when we were segregated, in the sense that we had our own community. I got that. All right. I saw a professional black people because I can see it, I can be it. That's why I became a cop, because I saw Billy Celeste. Right. So I got all that, but that's not what he said. No. That's not.
He said it was good for us.
That is not what he said. That struck me to my bone and brought me back to 1962 in Augusta, Georgia. That what he's saying is that in Jim Crow that we were together, but we had no other choice.
That's my point.
But to be together, because we would be killed. Right. When we tried to venture outside of that social territory, we were done. And I can tell you we were done because it happened to me in Augusta, Georgia.
But the other thing is, like I said, you love who you love, you marry who you want. But I always hear this type of propaganda from people who are in interracial relationships that's somehow trying to appease the other side. The Clarence Thomas, this guy here, Tim Scott, they're all interracial relationships. Tim Scott, because it don't look good, and I don't know, the jury's still out on whether or not his sexual identity, that's his own personal choice. But I'm saying all of a sudden he quickly got engaged, right? So he can be on the short list for vice president candidates with Donald Trump. So what do you have to do in that regard? You have to attack your own people and make it seem like somehow we're just lazy, right? We don't. And honestly, this is why I found it so insulting a few weeks ago when our current Commissioner Cox, I don't know if you saw the interview, the city council hearing, in which he alluded to that somehow, he had the means, his family had the means, so he was in private school. We grew up on the same street. I went through busing. His family was able to not have him to experience what I did, to say somehow my family didn't want it for me, alluding to that somehow, we just don't have the aspiration, and I'm paraphrasing him, but you can get from his message that he had all these opportunities, and that's why he's a success. His family had that, just like with Trump. So the path was clearer for him. And folks, don't look down your nose on people who had to work a little harder to maybe get where you are. And sometimes they don't.
Well, I personally think he had an opportunity because of what happened to him.
That was the reason why, he was put in the cast in the spotlight. Yeah. Absolutely, that took a part in it. But go ahead, Jamal.
Let me tell you, as a person who has squandered many an opportunity, right? And shout out to my dear mother, who spent up all of her money sending me. See, this is going to get into a deep psychological thing. My mother tried to do the best for me, right? That means putting me in the best clothes, the best schools, all this type of thing. She was just a regular woman. She was a hairdresser. Y'all might have knew her. Adrian's Hair Flare, right down the street from where y'all broadcasting from.
Jamal, that's here in the room. We had no use for hair, but
it was, yeah, right, exactly. But she was the prominent black hairdresser right there in Common Square, next to the sneaker store. She actually owned the building, and the sneaker store rented it. All that shit. She was a regular working woman, a hairdresser, but she was making a lot of money, on the perms and the presses and all this type of thing. And she used that money to, like I said, give me the best.
Yeah.
But in her brain, how she had been raised, best equals white.
Yeah,
so the best schools was the white schools or what have you.
Yeah.
So I've been kicked out of the finest establishments in the greater Boston region. Okay, I went to Park School. I went to Don Bosco. I was about to go into what was it, Dexter Academy or something. I mean, all of these things. And so opportunity does not automatically trump bad
no pun intended
word, right? No, right. Your societal outcomes,
right? But
so I was going to private schools, but I still had to come home to the hood.
But see,
and I had to walk through a cacophony. What do you call them things? You walk through the not the gator. You know what I'm talking about?
The metal detector.
The gauntlet. No, I had to walk through a gauntlet of drugs, pimps, and so sure, I'm going to private school, but on the way home, it's a different world, baby.
But see, there's a difference between him, and, like I said, Jamal and Commissioner Cox, right? We grew up, but he was never around because he was always with his other friends, and that's a choice. I'm not begrudging him for that, but the difference here, Jamal, like I said, is that we use that the same as Dr. Bradley, right? Is that we use it to give back. We don't forget where we came from, right? And that's where I take offense with people, where somehow they become this elite, right? That they don't see other people as them, right? They see them as somehow wanting something, and that every weekend, you and I, and even not during the weekend, we are out there trying to make it better for the folks who are coming behind us, because we learned that lesson. And when we get that intelligence, right, we don't just keep it to ourselves. We try to use that for the betterment of our communities, right? The work you do tirelessly, weekends, during the day. And so, but people who get in those positions, like this guy, Donaldson, you say, well, what are you doing to improve anybody else's situation to look like you? What are you doing? And because that's not his alternative. It is to go in there and try to, let me just say this, it's to go in there and try to manipulate people to somehow, like if you're using words like bro and all that and smoking a cigar, that's enough. Or it's, Trump trying to sell us gold sneakers and saying that because now he is seeing how the system treats black people, that somehow we can collect, we boys now. Look how long it took to catch up to him. Go ahead.
So that's the psychology of a victim, whether you want to call it fight or flight or whatever the heck you want to call it. But people respond to trauma that's happened in their life differently, whether that's racial trauma, whatever it is. Okay, so let's take pimps. Some guy could try to pimp out a girl and punch her in the forehead. That's all she needed, and now she's like, "Oh my God, I'm scared, and I'm gonna do whatever you say."
No.
Another girl, you punch her in the forehead, and she gonna cut you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So people respond to trauma differently. Some people curl and then become more pliable for the same abuse or the same system or structure that put them into the harm, and then now they're so scared of it that they're, no, don't do anything to me, and that happens. Or some people have a bad incident and they become a warrior for justice on that incident. You know what I mean? I was raped, I was molested, or I got beat up or whatever, and those people, those are the people that they say like run towards the fire.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that happens with everybody, and so we see that this guy here is just a person who is, and then also too we could look at the economical and the power factor. It's gonna tighten his career, get him some more money.
Right.
Even if it doesn't work out in the long run, he could write a book, and and some people aspire to be that.
Right. But see,
as sad as it is.
It is. You're listening to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. Calling number 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. We're talking about Congressman Donaldson, the representative from Florida, who basically trying to equate that somehow Jim Crow was good for us in some ways, and folks who aren't. But see, that's the problem, Jamal and Dr. Bradley, is when I said that immediately, and Dr. Bradley heard that, he had a visceral response to it because he understands it, right? A lot of our folks think Jim Crow is some black bird flying, and they don't understand it. And there are intentional things going on to try to erase the history of this country that doesn't put it in a positive light.
It's intentional misinformation.
Right.
All right. Miseducating our people who did not live it, who was actually hearing it from through books and not researching it on their own. And so we have to be very careful about what we read.
But let me
just, what we're reading is written by people who do not care.
But let me say, even though they didn't live it, right? Yeah. If they read it, they're now given a spin to put on it, and they're okay with telling that lie.
Yeah, but if you don't know it though, so if I don't know what I don't know, you can tell me anything that you want me to know.
Your version of the truth.
Did I say that right? Yeah. If I don't know what I don't know, you can tell me whatever you want me to know.
Right.
You know what I mean? So therefore, it's incumbent upon me to go out and seek out this information. Right. You know what I mean? So when I, like for history, I talk to my students a lot about history. Yeah. I talk to my children a lot about it. Yeah. And I say to them, one of the conversations I had with my daughter was that America would not be America without the slavery institution. The United States would not be united without the slavery institution. Her thing was like, what do you mean? Well, go in and research Somerset versus Stuart. Mm-hmm. That case where Mr. Somerset said to England, when he was brought to England by Mr. Stuart, who owned him, he said, "I'm free. I'm running." Mm-hmm. And then when they capture him, he sued for his freedom. And then the king said, "You're right. We don't have slavery in this nation." At that point, the southern part of the United States said, okay, now we need to come with the northern part and go against the king, because of the fact that they were going to eradicate slavery. Right. So the United States, very beginning, started with slavery. Whoa. And so when you start looking at it from that perspective, that everything that you're seeing here, all right, is educated. They're educating you the way that they want you to be educated.
To your point, and what makes me think about what's saying, Jamal, I want to get your perspective on this as well, right? Is now we talk about a border, right? Yep. and back when they were bringing more people into this country unwillingly than they're crossing the border. But because they could bring them here and work them for free without any rights, there was no limit to how many people could be brought here. Now all of a sudden, when people have to be compensated, or there may be some cost to them being here, right? We have to put a limit on those people, right? Because now they're a burden. Before they were free labor, and they helped build this wealth for a lot of these people. Because if I could get, just 10 people to work for me for free.
There you go. And so now, all right. So now that you have to pay them, well, it's time for them to go back to their country.
We no longer welcome. We're trying to welcome that over.
Exactly. And by the way, I'm just omitting the point that I also came from another country. Right. This wasn't my land.
All of Trump's wives, I think, except for one, from another country.
So what I'm simply trying to say, America has always been unfair to his people.
Jamal, good. Let me just say this, and then I'll let you. So now we are tasked with how do we, because I think it's a lost cause, honestly, how are we going to get people to invest in the history and understanding so they can have an informed conversation when people are spouting lies like this, and not just taking this Donaldson and others' word that somehow America has always been this great country and making America great again, when that's we know it has never been great for a lot of us. Jamal, go ahead. You want to say what you want to say, and then just get your opinion on that.
Well, I was just going to say, man's inhumanity to man, and that whole thing on, immigrant who could turn around and be ignorant to another immigrant. Yeah. If you saw the recent case of Stashes, subs, and pizza, right? So this guy has been terrorizing his employees, forcing them to work more hours at less pay. They wanted day off, and he was abusing some of them. Broke out one of the guy's teeth. Broke out, damaged his testicles. Right. I mean, the guy was viciously beating some of these people and forcing them into forced labor.
Bonded slavery. But here's the point,
Jamal. Here was the kicker. Yeah. Here's the kicker. just a couple of generations ago, the dude's name is, I forget his name, like Papadopoulos or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But just a couple generations ago, he was an immigrant too.
Right, but here's even worse than that, Jamal. All of this information was coming out. It was out in the public domain, and people were still going in there, dropping down their money.
Oh, they still go now.
Right.
I mean, I could drive by there today. They're still
I didn't go in there before, and even if I did, I would stop patronizing a business that was exploiting people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
not for nothing. I stopped years ago because every year, the city of Boston releases that report on the inspections.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had stopped about 15 years ago when I saw their rodent dropping ratio.
Because
but that's enough for me.
No, because it's sadly, that's all throughout the city. Even go some of the fine establishments.
But they had a special problem.
Right. No, right.
Not Jimmy's from Brigham.
Right.
No.
There's not chocolate sprinkles.
Yeah, no.
But so again, I throw the question out there. I want to get you guys, how do we combat this? Because it's out there, and as you said, if you get your information in an echo chamber, if you're not listening to it, and like I said, don't take our word for it. I think Jamal and Dr. Bradley, as well as Pastor, are some of the smartest people around who go and read and research. I didn't know Jamal's history as far when I first met him, but I said, man, this brother's very intelligent, right? And I didn't say that like I'm surprised because he's black, but I'm saying when he talked about his pedigree, I get it because that played a part in that, right? It's because I see that with the investment that my wife and I are able to make in our children, right? And I see other children who are their age. And I'm not saying our kids are smarter than them, but I know the reason, like with your, is because we're able to provide them with things that I didn't get.
Well, see, the thing is that our children get the exposure in many cases that the academic exposure that we didn't get.
Right.
I was very fortunate as a young man living in Dorchester on Talbot Avenue, off of Talbot
Roxbury,
Avenue.
right.
And so I had a skill to play ball, and I was able to go to some of the finest schools that Jamal mentioned. I went to Archbishop Williams, who has competed against Don Bosco in Catholic Memorial when I was in high school. So I was able to get into those on scholarship.
Right.
So I understand it, but most people do not have the resources, to send their children to places where we have sent our kids. But education is the key.
It's the equalizer.
That's the equalizer.
Right.
That is why they're trying so hard to make sure that we don't get a valuable education, because it will stop you in your track, and you will say, what's happening here?
Right.
What's going on?
But to that point, Dr. Bradley, like I was saying earlier, busing, there was very little learning going on because of the violence, right? We're now, even though we don't have busing here, we're experiencing. I was watching the news, and I very rarely watch it, and I think it's not too far from here. There was a school that was shot up this past week. The violence that's been taking place. It is very difficult for you to learn in an unsafe environment, right? So I say this because when we're talking about replacing some of our leaders, we know that most of them are not going to come from the Boston public school system unless they're coming from one of our exam schools, right? When they're talking about, advancement, and when they're talking about, the future Billy Celeste's, the future Willie Bradley's, the future Jamal Crawford's, where are they coming from? Because if these kids can't even read the diploma that they're handing them, because just statistically, and they don't have people in the classroom, because when we had that city council hearing a few weeks ago, and testifying before us were black academics from the Boston public school system, and seeing how they were treated, and because a lot of them spoke the truth about what was going on in the system, they were being terminated, right? And it's no different than a discipline for the few of us that are willing to speak out against what's going on. You become a target. How do we get our people better informed? Because that's where the lack and to that point, you and I don't live in a city. We don't get paid to come in and do this broadcast, but we know the importance of it, right? And so informing, we're hoping by getting people plugged in that they're doing a better job of understanding what's really taking place. Jamal, the work you do out in the community, right? You don't have to do that. But again, I ask the question is, how do we get this turned around, or can we get it turned around? Because my fear is that folks are going to have to learn the hard way. If Donald Trump gets in there, all these claims and lies that he claimed he's going to do for folks, just count it. Like they were talking to some people from West Virginia, and West Virginia is probably one of the poorest states in the country. and a lot of them, they were talking about how better they're doing, right? They have teeth and healthcare and insurance, things that they didn't have.
Teeth,
right. Because a lot of them were talking about they didn't have, but now with the affordable healthcare, they would say refer to the Obamacare, they've been able to better their health lives. But they said, in spite of that, they're going to vote for Donald Trump, who is saying he wants to take that away from them.
Fear.
Right.
Fear.
They'd rather have no teeth than have somebody like us and somebody that is going to have a fair process. Yeah. Again, Jamal, how do we get past this?
Yeah, not for nothing. We don't.
That's right.
Y'all are in the church, and if there's a Bible near you and you turn to the back, it's not nice. I believe we are on literally that slippery slope.
Yeah, and the guy orange selling Bibles, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a banana peel; it's an orange peel.
Right.
So, it's tough. And okay, so Dr. Bradley, watch this. Back to the Jim Crow thing, right? Watch the imagery of one of the most significant things of the Jim Crow era. Not the water fountains, not the thing, but sitting at the back of the bus. Right? Now, when I was a kid, back in the days when you could still smoke a reefer on the back of the bus.
A reefer? I ain't heard that in a long time. Go ahead.
I'm old school. I look young, but I'm old school. Right? But that was the thing.
Right.
And for me as a young man, it was like, oh, man, I can't wait till I'm up enough, man enough. And then I'm going to sit at the back of the bus. It was a big thing. All the cool kids, the tough kids, we clamored for the back of the bus.
Right.
Despite the history.
I know. That's true. I wouldn't sit in the back, but you're right. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It was a thing.
All right. It's almost like you're conditioned.
and for whatever reason, there was never, like, I don't know, a young gangster Rosa Parks of our generation was like, nah, check this out. Let's take over the front of the bus. Nobody ever, and so that's to me kind of some of the things where even our new generations haven't even clasped on to some of the victories that were already won.
Right, but
that was going to be
like voting.
That was going to be my response to him. Was that did you know about the Rosa Parks situation when you were actually when it was so fashionable to go to the back of the bus?
No, they don't.
You
because
understand what that significant was?
Clearly they don't, Dr. Bradley and Jamal, because it's the same reason, right? When they call each other the N-word, we cringe.
Or my N-word.
Right, we don't. Right, because we don't use it as a terms of endearment when we see each other as a greeting. I have never greeted you like that. It's all my brother.
Yeah.
That is because I know what that meant to us and what it still it means to us when people are saying it. And so this is why I said we're in the shape we're in. I don't see us digging ourselves out of this hole, and it's like these fallacies that this Congressman Byron Donaldson is saying is that somehow they were only with black families, that we were the only ones whose families were that the fathers weren't involved in their lives, right? There was just as many people in the D Street projects that didn't look as diverse as they do now in other places around the city.
Who also did not have a concerted effort to remove the father from the home. As Dr. Bradley says, the welfare thing and all this came in. I mean, what is it called? WIC.
Right.
Women, infant, and children.
Right. I tell people, if you want to get a real, watch that old movie. I don't know if you guys seen it with Claudine. Have you seen that movie?
No, I don't recall seeing it.
Oh, Claudine, you talking about with
James Earl Jones and James Earl Jones, where she was. You gotta watch that, Dr. Bradley. It reminds you, day where the social worker came by and they had to hide all the good furniture. And she had to hide the boy, hide him in the closet. Right? That's
that was our reality.
Right?
Kid.
Exactly.
But what I was going to say, Larry, is I think we can get our way out of this.
How?
And I think it starts with educating our people. It starts with educating our people correctly. It starts with actually not having other people educate our people, but we.
But unpack that. because your education is different because, like I said, you understood what your parents went through, right? And that shaped and molded you. That was taught in your household.
That's the biggest thing, Dr. Bradley.
Right.
That was you just said, because that goes back to the segregation integration.
Exactly. Right.
Exactly.
These kids have not experienced that. They don't think it's, when somebody is talking about, they're like looking at you like you have three heads. This is what I'm saying. It's a lot tougher sell today because they don't have a connection to it, right? Where you have a connection, like for me, I live and breathe it. I got Billy and them. So there wasn't any gap when we were having this conversation because it was still going on.
Yeah,
it's going on now, and yet we can identify it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You have this guy here. We call a cell phone.
Right.
We
but
have
if it isn't about P. Diddy or let him
exactly. But how do you, we are creative people.
Right.
We can write apps too.
Right.
You know what I mean? One of the things that struck me when I was watching television the other day, which I very seldom do because I read 2 or 3 books at a time, which drives my wife crazy. But nevertheless, one of the things that struck me when I finally took time to watch the History Channel, there was no history on it.
No.
I would swamp people and all those other people, but there was no history.
Right. Yeah. Pawn stars.
Exactly. So where's the history on the History Channel? Right. Because the history of America is not too beautiful.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So if I
and not for nothing, when they do history, you notice that they have a huge focus on the Nazis.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So when you're actually, how can we educate our children? We have to go to where they are.
Well, we do.
And making sure that they're getting pure and accurate information about the history of
But
this
even
country.
a channel like BET that is supposed to be black entertainment television, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to just be entertained. I need to be informed, right? So even on those, if you turn on there and you watch the programming, it is so dysfunctional.
Yeah, but Larry, we have black billionaires who can buy those programs, though. You know what I mean? Remember I talked about
I talked
about the EE ratio in America for black people?
Yeah, but our black billionaires are Tyler Perry. And
They're making money.
They're not helping.
Because, like I said, if you and I said right now, okay, we're going to have a program here, right, to inform you and educate. Because I don't know how it was, but I want to grab Pastor Hobbies over there. He's doing something. You were here. I'm assuming you were present during the women's conference or the event that they had here last week or a couple of weeks ago, that Sunday, with the black women
of worship.
Women of worship. How was the attendance there? Honestly,
I mean, it wasn't Memorial Day weekend, I think, or whatever, so it was not as good as it could have been.
That's what I'm talking about. But if we had said that we were going to have booty shaking and all of that.
The more action it is, the more that's the more people are going to respond. That's what.
But this is what I'm trying to get to these guys. I'm not saying that what you guys are not talking about, but I'm saying is that reality is that it's not like they said before. If you build it, they will come. How do you get them to? Because they don't see any value in that. They see value, and that's where they've been taught is to entertain you till you drop.
Yeah, but I would say that you have to go to where people are. So what's wrong with, like for instance, what's wrong with having a situation like, entertainment and then interjecting some knowledge into?
Because they'll walk out when the entertainment stops. That's I'm telling you.
No, we're doing the entertainment.
Yeah.
Why not make that a part? One of the things that strikes me as odd is that we would do things that gathering people, like we say the Caribbean parade.
Yep.
But we have no actually registration tables for voting.
See
how do you interject? You have to be strategic about it.
I said this. It's funny you said, I think you have some wire connected to me this morning because I was saying to Sister Priscilla yesterday because you were talking about I said, look, what we should be doing is graduation time is coming up. We need to have a table outside of we should get a list of where the graduations are taking place. All of them are eligible for 18 years old. A lot of them are older. Have them register right then and there. And some of the people that are coming to the graduation, you probably have 300 or 400 people at each graduation, combined with students and parents and friends. Sign them up. Like I said, go to where they are.
And what I would do is take it a step further. I would make that a part of the graduation requirement.
You could already pre-sign these people up, and then too, don't just limit it to the high schools too. Let me add in there RCC and Bunker Hill because there's a lot of kids in there.
Right. So in order to get a part of, in order to get this particular, you got to go through this process. You got to actually register. I can't guarantee that you're going to vote, but at least you're registered.
But where do we get the people from? Because we killed a few people that are willing to do the work. Like I'm Saturday I'm here, Sunday I'm with Jamal, and during the week so I'm saying is that where are we going to recruit?
Now with that, to Dr. Bradley's idea, no, we got to call these administrative people from all these schools or the colleges. They all have student service coordinators. We could put together a proposal, but at the end of the day, no, they should run it. Like just like these.
That's right.
These kids already have to sign off on a bunch of things before they graduate. This would just be another option, and obviously we can't force it on them.
No, right.
But like when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid, I forget what happened, but do y'all remember selective service?
Again, now here's a guy that's got a wire connected to me too. I was getting ready to say, you have to sign up for selective service, even though we don't have a draft. You still have to sign up.
Yeah, and I remember as a kid, I was confused. I didn't even know what it was, but I had to go fill out that little check box and give it to the post office, and it was a big thing.
So why can't we do something similar for a
registration?
Again,
it takes who is going to take the lead on that.
We just got to propose it. We got to propose it and put it in the schools. Look, let's have a conversation after this.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in. Because
we can put it together, make a little brochure. We'll put Hobbs on the front cover because he's the best dressed among us. And we'll keep it moving.
I like the working harder, smarter, not harder, because that's what we've been doing, and we've been kind of doing. That's why I was very encouraged at the press conference the other day, because I looked around and there were people from different factions of the city government, city actually employment, that were there who were fed up. And these were people I had never met, but our stories were very similar in our distress, right? In the treatment. The city employs over 17,000 employees, and we seem to be a common that all those of us who are at the bottom feeding level, and even a lot of those who are put in leadership, are not there to support us. They're there to take care of themselves. I ain't mad at them for that, but we have to stop just settling. And I like this idea. I'm just wondering how we can implement it in a way that is meaningful, because right now graduations will start taking place very shortly if they have.
Matter of fact, too, let's holler at a couple of our counselors. Let's holler at Worrell. Let's holler at Tanya. Let's holler at Ben
Jamal
Weber.
What we got to do is find out who is the president of the education, the chair on the council, because I think they should be someone who is at least interested in leading this, because that is the chair. They chair the education on the council. No, you agree? We got
voting, or the education or the governmental relations, because or even civic engagement. There could be multiple tie-ins here.
And I want to just give full disclosure that idea was not my original idea. I was talking to my oldest sister, Hattie Cross, who mentioned that to me, and I was like, sis, that's a very good idea. We need to do that. In addition to that, which is my idea on this one, is that we need to mandate civic education
back in the school,
which is a part of that whole process.
Right.
And you have to, once you complete that particular class, then that should be a part of it.
Right.
You should not graduate out of high school without actually registering to vote.
Right. You don't know what you don't know. This is really, like I said, we are in some real difficult and challenging times, and we are not taking this serious. Like, people think the protest is not voting, right? That's not a protest. Because what you're doing is saying you're leaving it up to other people to decide your fate, whether or not you agree with everything that I look at. Biden's, what he's done and tried to do, and I look at the Republican side, it is counter to anything that betters our situation. It is defund everything. I mean, the staples of this country, whether you agree or not, the bedrock has been law and order. Right.
Now, okay, so Larry, I do believe, voting is a choice, but I do believe people should have it. Now, whether or not they choose to exercise it, based on whatever the voting cycle is, or the choices are, that's it. But everyone should have it. I mean, not for nothing, too. It's like a driver's license, but a lot of people have driver's license who don't even own cars.
Right, but to that point, Jamal,
or you could have a gun license and hope to never use it.
Right, but to that point, Jamal and Dr. Bradley, right? We just have now the nominee for the Republican Party, a convicted felon, right? And in a lot of states, if you're a convicted felon, you cannot vote. Now, they want to change the laws in states that will allow him, because they realize they're in a quagmire because of their own rules, right? Like, in New York, he cannot have
those rules are for us,
right? He cannot carry. Right? They never thought they would be in this situation. So, if it was important for helping convicted felons, then why are we just now going to address this, and we're only addressing it for this individual? Because they understand that you can't just carve this out for him to say he's a convicted felon and he should be able to vote and to be able to carry a gun, because New York State says you're a convicted felon. You can't. He has Secret Service protection, but he still has a license to carry. So that has been revoked. But now in Florida, they wanted to lock. They were locking people up who were felons for voting. So is Trump going to be arrested if he goes and casts a vote for himself?
Well, I mean, DeSantis said that he can vote in the state now. All of a sudden, it's okay
for felons. Is it just because how do you carve out a special privilege for him if the law is equal for all? You see, they get caught in their own quicksand with this guy.
Like I said to my wife, he's white.
Jamal, we got 2 minutes. Want to give you a minute. How we move on this? What's the next steps? Because like I said, I got a lot on my plate, but this is so important.
If Donald Trump can actually help move the needle forward for convicted felons being able to get licensed firearms, I'm all for it.
So you
still won't vote for him, but I'm all for it.
Right, you got your cannon, you got an eye on a cannon, you know. I mean, I'm telling you folks, it scares me because I have 2 young children, and I'm like, is this the world that we're going to hand off to them? And we're preparing them to navigate, but I mean, like Dr. Brown, I didn't move out of the city because I didn't want to identify with who I am. I moved out because I see what's going on now. This is not normal. This is not healthy. We wonder why we have a lot of it is our mental health, and a lot of places it's a food desert. I mean, a lot of the food that Jamal and I are able to get people on the week, that's the only time they get organic food because it's not cost effective for people to get it. So these stores and are not there
unless we bring it. They shop and they save a lot,
right? And we know that stuff is treated with pesticides. I mean, a lot of our kids now have autism. Why?
But again, that's the way you address the issue around their birth rate being outpaced by the death rate. If I can kill you off, think about this, and I leave it with this. This is my last thought. If Hitler would have created an environment where the Jews would kill themselves, he would have been persecuted as for the Holocaust.
Yeah, wow.
Think about that,
Jamal.